Sok, professor at Yonsei University. Before we begin, I'd like to briefly introduce Professor Kim. And I do really mean brief, because it'll take, I think, at least 5 minutes or so to give full details of his short bio. I think it's on the booklet, right? Professor Kim is currently the Dean of the College of Government and Business at Yonsei University. He's the President of the International Institute of Administrative Sciences in Brussels. Is that a correct pronunciation?
Brussels.
Oh, Brussels. In English, it's Brussels, right? Or Brussels. But anyway, excuse my pronunciation. He's also the acting president of the Asian Association for Public Administration. He's also vice chairperson of the United Nations Committee of Experts on Public Administration, and a lifetime fellow of the National Academy of Public Administration in Washington, D.C. He has served on many government committees and was secretary to the President for Personnel Policy in the Office of the President. He published very widely, publishing several books and over 180 scholarly articles in major domestic and international journals. I could go on, but I'll stop here. Today, Professor Kim, as Dr. Yang briefly mentioned, will talk about the Korean experience of administrative modernization and reforms. So please welcome Professor Kim with a big round of applause.
First of all, many thanks goes to Dr. Kim for your kind introduction. And honorable excellencies, dignitaries, and delegates, and ladies and gentlemen. It is, of course, great privilege and honor for me to speak on administrative modernization and the Korean experience. But my intention is not to simply describe what we did or praise the Korean experience, but I like to humbly share our experience with you for possible collaboration in the future. Instead of having just one-way delivery and then tomorrow you forgot everything, but I like to introduce our experience for searching for further collaboration between Korea and your country or your agencies. So that's my intention. I will briefly speak about public governance, followed by reform measures such as civil service reform, decentralization, e-government, and other issues in public administration. First, as you know, Korea became independent in 1945, and then we were under American occupation army for 3 years. So in 1948, we established our own government with President Lee Seung-man. Then we have several presidents, as you see, Yoon Bo-seon, Park Chung-hee, and then we have a few transitional presidents with the military generals. And then reform era began early 1990s with Kim Yong-sam, Kim Dae-jung, followed by Roh Moo-hyun. And currently we have President Lee Myung-bak. So among all these presidents, perhaps President Park Chung-hee is the most popular president, although he received some criticism in terms of political development, etc. But nevertheless, many Koreans praise him for economic development and economic growth. And in terms of political development, perhaps Kim Yong-sam, Kim Dae-jung may get a lot of credit, followed by Roh Moo-hyun for civic participation, transparency, and so on. And current President Lee Myung-bak can have some credit for economic recovery, although some areas he has some weakness, of course. Currently, you may have heard about government reorganization, and when President Lee became the president, reorganized many ministries. He combined number of ministries and designed and generated somewhat big departments. And among them, Ministry of Strategy and Finance is in charge of finance, budgeting, of course. But in terms of reform point of view, it is pushing for public enterprise, public corporation reform, because we have many public corporation, public entities, state-owned enterprise as well. In terms of public administration, Ministry of Public Administration and Security, we call MOPAS, is in charge of organization, personnel issues, e-government, as well as civil service and public sector reform. So in terms of reform point of view, these two ministries are quite important. So in the newspaper or TV nowadays, you may hear many reorganization issues. But this is written in Korean, sorry for that. But there is few ministries never changed, such as Ministry of Justice, Ministry of National Defense. No change from the beginning until today. And likewise, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Of course, we added the trade function to Foreign Affairs, but nevertheless, Ministry of Foreign Affairs remains same, almost same. And then we had the Ministry of Finance, but middle of 60s, we created the Economic Planning Board, and that continued until late 90s, and then we reorganized, but nevertheless, Ministry of Finance, the function itself remaining almost the same. But if you see this diagram, many changes took place in the area of industry, agriculture, fisheries, marine affairs. These areas, there are lots of changes. Therefore, reorganization took place. So that's one observation. Another area would be culture, tourism, sports, and information. Those areas also rapidly changing, therefore reflected such changes in government. So there are 2 points of view. We should remain the same government structure for many years. This is one area. But the other area, wait a minute, Korea is a very dynamic society, so that we must reflect new challenges, new demand in terms of government structure. So I think these 2 different point of view conflicting each other, but nevertheless, that's characteristics of South Korea. In terms of grade structure, we have 9 grades. Grade 9 is lowest, grade 1 is highest. It's always difficult to explain to my American friends. In America, large number means higher grade, but in Korea, it's opposite. Grade 1, number 1 is highest in terms of career civil servant. And we have political appointees, of course, ministers, vice ministers. But these numbers are very small. We have just approximately 100 political appointees. That's all. Except them, everyone, all of them are career civil servants. So we have very stable public bureaucracy. This might be different from Latin American practice or some other area. And also we have 3 open competitive examination. Grade 9, grade 7, and grade 5. Grade 5 is very important entrance examination based on written exam. Of course, historically, this examination system is affected by Chinese imperial exam, but nevertheless, we created our own model, and it works quite well because it's corruption-free, no corruption whatsoever in terms of entrance examination. It is fair. So which is different practice from your own experience, but in terms of our own climate or soil, it works fine. In terms of government workforce, we have nearly 1 million in government, excluding military personnel, etc. And in central government, we have 611,000. In local government, we have 345,000. So if I say 611,000 in central government, you may say, oh, that's a large number. But if you look at the details, that include teachers, elementary, junior high school, high school, etc. We try to changed their status from national to local employees, but we had very strong state, teacher union, and we failed. So still they are national government employees, about 350,000. And also we have law enforcement personnel, 136,000, and postal service, 31,000. So if you exclude that, remaining number would be just 95,000, less than 100,000, which is a relatively small number. And those people making public policy, implement, and so on. So I don't think it is big government. President-elect Park Geun-hye, who is the first woman president-elect, we have a lot of expectation. You have expectation, I have expectation. So she will manage our country from February 25 until 2018 for 5 years. So we have great expectation for further continuous growth in terms of national economy, better social policy for fairness, integration, as well as social welfare, improving government effectiveness, and reducing corruption, and securing our national defense, etc. So she has lots to do, but also there are lots of challenges. National security, for instance, North Korean, nuclear bombs and so on. And another area, we will have a national election next year. In other words, we will change congressmen, congresswomen, governors, mayors. All election can be done next year. And also we are discussing constitutional amendments, whether we should keep this for 5-year presidential term, single term, or we change to parliamentary system or not. This is also important political agenda. So that will take place, then nation may be divided. Therefore, she has a lot of challenges as well. Now, let's talk about civil service reform. Every country has civil service. And civil service, in my view, is the foundation of government, central or local government. So we must keep the civil servant politically neutral, and we need to establish the rule of law, making independent auditing system, judiciary system, and reduce the corruption significantly. So in that regard, we made a lot of change and development. I'm sure you saw this picture. If you see this diagram, 50s and 60s, our per capita GDP was very low. Korea was very poor. We know that. But with strong political leadership, Korea gained rapid growth from the early 1960s to 80s and 90s. So this is very significant development. Maybe we can see similar picture in Singapore, Taiwan, elsewhere. But nevertheless, we have a big question here. Why? What happened? I'm sure there might be a lot of stories and explanations, But tonight, I want to just mention just one small element, which is public bureaucratic contribution. Public bureaucracy also made significant contribution for economic development because they believe that. Bureaucrats also believe that they are part of a development engine, and they made significant contribution for national development. In terms of institutionalization, institution is important. So we made civil service law in 1949. We made the National Civil Service Law in 1949, just 1 year after the independence. And also we promulgated a separate law for local government as well in 1963. So these two civil service laws made foundation, and of course after that we changed many times to update new changes as well. And of course we learned from other countries, America, Japan, and many other countries as well. And then our experience also affected our neighboring countries, such as China, Vietnam, as well as many Indochina Peninsula countries. Currently, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Indonesia, and those countries are also coming to South Korea to see what we are doing. For instance, in Vietnam, In China, they had ordinance, but ordinance is not highest, legal system. So they made the civil service law in 2005, and then Vietnam learned that China made the civil service law, so they were under pressure, and then they developed ordinance in 1998. Then they passed law of civil servant and state employees in 2008, and this process, I personally participated. I went to Hanoi and advised what to develop, what to add, what to delete, and so on. So I'm very proud of such experience. So that's why in the beginning of this meeting, I said we need more collaboration on public administration. Currently, other South Asian countries might be interested in this kind of a civil service reform, and we can collaborate together. In addition to civil service law, we promulgated separate training law as well in 1961. In many countries, training is part of civil service law, but we had a separate law in 1961. And then, of course, we created other decrees. And then once we had full-scale local autonomy, we also made the promulgated Education Training Act for local civil servant as well. So all this legal institutionalization made a lot of development and contribution for nation building and administrative modernization. This is a generous scope, not Korean model, but civil servants or public servants means that person who is working in executive body, legislative body, judiciary body, as well as local governments. But in a socialist country like Vietnam, China, ruling party like Communist Party members also, part of civil servants, and social political organization, state enterprise might be included. But in Korean case, we rule out party as well as social political organization and state government employees, state enterprise. So excluding them, currently we have only 980 some numbers. And also we are based on meritocracy, based on merit system. We have a different tradition like a spoil system, but the influence spoil system is quite limited, as I told you. The number of political appointees in Korea is approximately just 100. And also the central personnel authorities' role is very important in terms of civil service. In Korea, currently we have Ministry of Public Administration and Security, but before 2008, we had a Civil Service Commission, which I miss it. We should maintain Civil Service Commission, but President Lee, he believed that big departments could function better than small departments. So he combined together with 2 or 3 agencies, and the Ministry of Public Administration and Security is in charge of personnel, organization, and many others. In Japan, there are 2 organizations. In China or Vietnam, low or middle-level employees are managed by Ministry of Home Affairs or Ministry of Internal Affairs or Personnel and Security. But like high level, they call cadres. High level workers can be managed by the organization department of the Communist Party. So we have different practice and situation. Now the overall state of the civil service. In the past, we believe that human resource system have been different between public sector and private sector. That's our perception. It should be different, or it is different. But I guess in the future, whether you like it or not, I think the global trend is more or less moving toward normalization, which means flexibilization, which means a process where employment procedures and conditions gradually become more like those existing in market, in the private sector. So public sector, private sector, HR practice becoming quite close, quite similar. I guess that's the global trend. Of course, we have some reservation, but that is trend. Shift from statutory to more contractual governance, career orientation to position orientation gradually, And the position above the entry level can be opened up for external recruitment. For instance, in Korea, we opened up Director General and higher. We opened up 20% of Director General's position in late 1990s. At that time, I suggested let's open up for 30%. And at that time, my counterparts told him, Professor Kim, you are crazy. But I'm not crazy because I calculated that. When I say 30%, they are going to criticize. So there is some room for negotiation. So we end up with 20%. So that's calculated announcement. And we opened up for 20% of Director General for external competition. And of course, pay differential may tend to increase depending upon skills, task, and workplace. And another global phenomenon is performance. Performance everywhere. So many countries set up a performance standard, and then they measure, of course, typical criticism about these issues. Oh, public sector is hardly quantify, hardly, get numerical data. Yes, of course we know, but there might be some other way to measure. So methodology issue is always debatable, but let's set aside. So that's a global trend. So in the old days, innocence is important. Someone comply with rules and regulation and innocence. But I think innocence is not good enough anymore. We need to exercise excellence. And in my opinion, excellence means that innocence with high performance. I think that's the way we are going. So in Korea, we practice performance-related pay. This is also a very hot, debatable issue. Korean experience is successful or not? How do you measure? There's always methodological debate. But nevertheless, we have performance-related pay for senior civil servants. Those who had excellent grade S, they can get 15% of annual salary, which is not negligible, which is a substantial amount of money. If you get $10,000 for additional compensation every year, and when you start with your friend with the same grade, the same salary structure, but few years later, you can see wide salary gap. Therefore, this is not joke. So at the moment, as far as I know, I don't see here many complain about this system. So that means that at least this system moving fine. I don't say excellent, but at least moving fine. But anyway, we try to modernize human resource management system, human resource development system, but still we have some assignments because we need to improve our compensation system, and also we need to provide employee assistance. We have public unions, of course, but the public union relationship is not as smooth as other countries. And also we need to development HR information system and so on. So we do have a number of tasks in the future in terms of public personnel management. Now let's move to local autonomy and decentralization. In Korea, we have 16 provincial level of government, 9 provinces and 7 metropolitan cities. In Korean context, metropolitan cities means that big city with over 1 million population, we designate as metropolitan city. We have 7 metropolitan cities, including Seoul. And Jeju Islands is a self-governing province with more discretion, more autonomy. And we have full-scale local autonomy since early 1990s. From the beginning, 1949, we promulgated Local Autonomy Act, but it was postponed somewhat for many years during the Park Chung-hee regime. But we recovered in early 90s. So now we have full-scale local autonomy. So we have 2 tiers, provincial level government as well as municipalities. We have 16 provincial level government, and we have 230 municipalities. So governors, county managers, mayors, they are all elected, including local council members as well. So all this stipulated by the Local Autonomy Act promulgated in 1949. In 1949, President Seungman Lee, who got PhD from Princeton University, well-educated gentleman, he learned a lot from America, so he introduced American system, including local autonomy. But ordinary people, they didn't know what democracy means, so we failed. Of course, there might be many reasons as well, but we recovered in early 1991, and now chief executives, local council members are all elected by the residents, and the next year, as I told you, we will have general election, and this will be important political test for President-elect Park Geun-hye. And also we have unitary system. That means that almost every province, a city has similar system. This is a interesting system for many years, but I guess in the future we need to diversify a little bit. In America, too many different models, but at least we need to try somewhat different model from one region to another. That might be another political agenda. So in the face of intergovernmental relation in Korea, from independence to 1960s, we had autonomy, but that was early, very immature practice. In 1961, President Park became the leader. He just postponed local autonomy. And then 70s, 80s, no development. But when we have Olympic game during 1988, the president at that time liberalized this issue, and then we had the election starting in 1991. And so today we have a quite expanded autonomy, expanded political authority, expanded administrative discretion, but still we have something go further, such as fiscal decentralization. There are three dimensions: political decentralization, administrative decentralization. These two areas we did pretty good progress. But in terms of fiscal decentralization, still we have a lot to do. I could say we have just 20% of decentralization in terms of fiscal point of view. E-government is also one of the important matter in Korean context. I'm just moving quickly because time is quite limited. Innovation means change, transportation, and doing fast, smart, and cheaper. So we must develop a public administration system available anywhere, anytime, and any device. In the future, we need to bring your own device. Bring your own device. Currently, we are pretty much dependent upon personal computer, but now you have smartphone and different equipment. So we must utilize those equipment with the public applications. And in Seoul, in this town, there is a call center called Dasan Call Center. So if you have any question, you may call anytime, 365 days for 24 hours. Try it tonight, 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. And if you're able to speak in Korean, 어디로 가야 됩니까? 이런 문제로, they will reply to you, even 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. And a few languages available: English, Japanese, perhaps Chinese, or Vietnamese. So if someone asks Professor Kim, what is special characteristics of Korean public administration? I would say 빨리빨리. You know what 빨리빨리 means? Rapido, or hayaku in Japanese. Yeah, we like to have quick transaction. If citizens come to the public office, please give me admission. We expect quick transaction. Yeah. We like to see quick transaction. So 빨리빨리 spirit is very important for public administration in my point of view. And also we like to build up a new age of cloud computing. You have personal computer, but we like to combine the use of computing resources together, all together. So if you have this kind of picture, it looks like cloud. So we call cloud computing. And this is another new era. Instead of having just a one-way communication, we need to have interactive communication. Also, currently, we're trying to have open data system. In other words, government has a lot of data, and they keep it as secret resources. I think this is a wrong idea. We must open up government data for, utilization. Academic community can get samples of public data, and they can analyze based on statistical analysis. Commercial area, they can utilize transportation information and many other information. So open data is also important reform issues. And so United Nations report 2012, they evaluated e-government development, and Korea was one of the top countries. Of course, you have a different point of view. Oh, that's wrong evaluation. You may say so, but that's one of the report. And e-participation index, Netherlands and Korea had a similar score as leading countries. But nevertheless, my point here is that we're trying to develop good e-government, electronic government, or mobile government as much as we can. So this is the direction we are moving forward. The score is not important. So, general point of view, we may say Korean government is successful, and the question is, what is success factors? Well, first of all, I think strong leadership and strategic approach is important. And secondly, we had a sustained investment e-government budget. Without resources, it's difficult to implement, and we spend almost over 1% of national budget for e-government. And also, we had good IT governance. We had the Ministry of Information and Communication. This is also one of the reorganization issue today, whether we should have this independent, separate Ministry of Information and Communication or not. And also, we had a Presidential Committee for Electronic Government. And also, we have National Information Agency, which is R&D organization, which supports research and development. And also, we utilize change management of public officials in changing e-government environment and climate, and the technology support available from the market, like Samsung, LG, SK, etc. And also, Koreans are quite dynamic. Dynamic means that positive sense or negative sense, but nevertheless, we are quite dynamic in a sense. Now, global trend in public administration. We need to transform quite rigid public service to a more flexible and innovative system. This is, I think, common theme for almost every country. So that we want to shift from industrial era bureaucracy to more information or knowledge age bureaucracy. So we need to have more democratic, flat, flexible, and quality-oriented, also many choices, not just one size fits all, but to have more choices and options, and ICT based and adapted work process. But budgeting situation is quite severe almost everywhere, so we have severe fiscal pressure and constraints as well. And also in terms of models of public administration, in my view, there are three models. Traditional models, which is legal public administration. In Europe, they call administrative science. Currently, I am the leading International Institute of Administrative Science. In Europe, Germany, they still respect legal law very much. But in American context, management is very important. But nevertheless, in old days, legal public administration was dominant model. Obedience, compliance with rules, impartiality, and so on. But in 1990s, we faced a serious financial crisis, particularly in Asia. Asian financial crisis hit many countries in Asia. So we had no choice but to reform public sector. So we began to adopt market mechanism into the public sector, and then we labeled it as new public management, NPM. And NPM is sort of an economic model of public management, adopting competition, customer point of view, customer satisfaction, efficiency. These ideas heavily influenced the public sector in 90s and even now. But over the years, sociological influence is quite significant, emphasizing stakeholders' relationship, more responsiveness, more collaboration. So I would say as sociological public administration or sociological public governance. That's why we emphasize civic engagement, civic participation. It's quite sociological issues. Of course, these three models are not exclusive each other, but maybe a little bit more proportion in certain elements, or less, a small proportion in certain elements. Depending upon your country's situation, picture might be quite different each other. And the definition of governance is quite broad. In 70s, if we ask what's the definition of governance, nobody can give us clear definition. But nowadays, it's very common terms. We use this term very frequently. It would be process. It could be capacity. But my point here is that the essence of the governance, the term of the governance is interaction among multiple stakeholders. I think this is a very important element, interaction among multiple stakeholders. So I was looking for the image of governance. What is the image of governance? I didn't find any good picture on governance. Nobody give us clear image and visual image. But I went to Salzburg in Austria, and I was moving around, and fortunately I found very interesting bicycle called octopus bike. It looks like octopus because it has several legs and so on. If you're sitting in this kind of octopus bike, you cannot move by yourself. First of all, you have to talk, communicate with your neighbors. Where do you want to go? Do you want to go right, go left? But if you have different options, you must debate and communicate and persuade someone to have agreement. Otherwise, you cannot move. I guess this is interesting picture of the governance image. So traditional government might be very strong, a two-wheel bicycle, but the current model of public administration would be this kind of octopus bike. We should communicate with the people, try to have common agreement, and communication, particularly in Korean context, communication, collaboration is quite important. And also, there might be different types of governance. There is no single types of governance. Maybe in the old days, we had clan governance based on family relation, and then hierarchical bureaucratic governance, then good enough governance. Good enough governance means that among important values like participation, transparency, accountability, in developing countries, many developing countries, they cannot do everything at once. So they may choose few items and improve those governance. We may label as good enough governance, but good enough is never enough. So we must move up to good governance. And then eventually, hopefully, we want to go to democratic good governance. Yeah. Still, we have a long way to go. And also these issues, like important pillars, participation, accountability, transparency, consensus building, all this important issue is evolving. In other words, there is no fixed concept. Participation itself is not fixed term. It is evolving because in the beginning you are sharing very reactively, but later on you can open up more participation for public comments, public meetings, and then involvement with workshops and pollings, and then collaboration level, you can have more advisory committees, consensus building process. Eventually you can have empowerment. So it is evolving. Therefore, there is an ongoing process. So in doing so, we can develop democratic good governance. Even in accountable governance, maybe in socialist countries, they might have rule-based answerability, but advanced countries, here we have American delegates, Norwegian delegates, many other French delegates. I'm glad to see you. Advanced countries, they may have performance-based answerability. And participatory governance is also evolving from reactive information sharing to consultation, and consultation to full participation. And also transparent governance is also changing. Northern European country has very good transparent governance and clear, open, accessible with FOIA. FOIA means Freedom of Information Act. This is an important issue for Korea as many other developing countries. So overall, we need to promote public sector reform, but there are many trajectories, such as civil service reform, anti-corruption, decentralization, corporatization, financial reform, budgetary reform, deregulation, electronic government, and PPP, and so on. So we cannot do all this at once, but at least we can prioritize, and then we can select a few items, and then we can move on for further administrative modernization. So what kind of lesson can we get? First of all, I think reducing corruption is very critical. In Korean experience, we try to reduce opportunity for corruption, particularly in wet public agencies. Wet means that very vulnerable agencies, which has very important, powerful functions such as admission, permission, license. Those areas used to be very wet, very vulnerable for corruption. So we targeted and we try to reduce opportunity for corruption. And also we didn't rely on the police to reduce corruption. We emphasized the role of the prosecutor's office, but prosecutor's office also not good enough. So we promulgated anti-corruption law separately, and also we created the anti-corruption agency and build up the capacity. And also we need to cut red tape. There are so many documents, in many developing countries, each civil servant's desk, there are so many rules and regulations. So we need to cut the red tape and go back to the basics, and also punish severely. In the election periods, I had good experience when I was my child. My father was a community leader, and so since he is community leader, many politicians came to my house looking for his support. So usually bring small gift. That was common practice in old days, but nowadays, if someone buy a lunch or dinner for you, you will get 50 times a punishment. So it is very difficult to give a small token for friendship to get a vote. And also, I think we need to provide adequate salaries. Many developing countries, public servant salary is still very low, maybe $50 or few $100 and so on. So I think these issues are quite complicated. I think corruption issues are very complicated matter. And also there are many challenges in front of us. First of all, fiscal sanity. There is no exception. Even Germany. Germany has a lot of challenge because neighboring countries asking for further assistance. And crisis of competence, information overload, government without boundaries and borders. E-government is just the beginning. I don't know how far we can go. And government by contractors, results really do matter. And we need to have green leadership, conservation, and also clean ethical leadership, security, privacy, of course. But I like to emphasize the last one. We need to expect surprise and catastrophic non-routines. Look at Fukushima case. You see three things happening together: nuclear issues, tsunami, and also the earthquake. Three things happening together. It's a really devastating situation. I think we have to think about such routines, catastrophic non-routines. If you say, "Oh, I didn't know," that's not acceptable answer. We should think about such unexpected, catastrophic non-routines and prepare for it. And there is Heinrich law, and you might take a look at the wisdom of Heinrich law as well. And future governments, there are lots of challenges because people expect to do more and do better with less. How can you do more and do better without much resources? It's paradoxical, but nevertheless, this is common pressure for many countries. Therefore, we need to raise cost effectiveness, and no citizen left behind. And people has high expectation and collaboration. And also we need to think about multi-channel delivery as well, integrated service delivery. Instead of delivering service just by your agency or your ministry, but we can work together, like a government travel service. Each agency provides travel service for their own employees. Why not to have government-wide travel service? I think this kind of new idea can be developed. And strengthening participation and democratic decision making, and also development of mobile government in rural and remote areas, particularly in Philippines. I'm sure we have Filipino delegate here. In Philippines, they have a 77,107 island. 7,107 islands. Such environments, I think this mobile, electronic technology may work well for such rural and remote areas. Also, we need flatter and speedy agile government with technological applications. So I think this is just a few points of future government. So I'm also very pleased to see many delegates, ambassadors, and many delegates from developing countries as well as advanced countries. But for our friend from developing countries, we need to improve aid effectiveness. We provide assistance in the name of official development assistance. Korea has KOICA, Japan has JICA, and many other countries are available. And so we provide lots of assistance, but trickle-down effects are quite negligible, minimal. So there is something wrong. So that's why Paris Declaration made up this nice comprehensive framework. Of course, there are different declarations, but I guess this is quite comprehensive, emphasizing, ownership, alignment, harmonization, and results-oriented management and accountability, mutual accountability. So having all this, I think we need to improve aid effectiveness or development effectiveness. And in order to do so, I think we need to work together. We need to collaborate together. So that's why in the beginning I said my purpose of tonight's lecture is not simply show you our experience, but to promote close collaboration between Korea and your agency and your government, your institute. We have different experience. America, French, German, they may have different experience, and Korea or Asian country may have different experience. Also, I'm glad to see many Latin American friends and African friends here too. Yeah. So even though our situation, environment different, but there might be a way to help each other in terms of ODA projects and many other dimensions. So we are ready. Yeah, we are waiting for your proposal, your suggestion to work with you, and we can open up for our administrative system, legal system, management experience, and other ways of experience. And we want to share our experience with you. And that is my last comment. So in the way of public sector reform, many countries has awareness. I visited Bangladesh many times, and other countries in South Asia. They have wonderful reports, believe me. Well-analyzed reform reports, civil service reform, public sector reform, they have reports. But the important question here is when to implement. Implementation. Change, implement, change to achieve results. I think that's the key action. That's an important issue. NATO means no action, talk over. I think now action, talk over. I guess NATO is different things, but I like to emphasize NATO. Yeah. Now action took over. Yeah. So I think execution is important strategy for public sector reform. So in terms of successful reform plan, in our experience, we need to share a sense of urgency or crisis. If you believe that administrative reform, government reform is necessary, I think we should share a sense of urgency or crisis. And then, we need some sort of a diagnosis and then develop a vision for further development and generate short-term wins and then evaluate and adjust further challenges and developments. So I hope we can promote further administrative modernization or administrative reform in the future. In doing so, we can collaborate through AKS, Academy of Korean Studies, or KOICA. So I believe that there are lots of things to do for international development cooperation in the area of public administration. And thank you for your attention.